Hello and welcome to this video series on airline revenue management. We're going to start by talking about what revenue management is so that we have a good understanding of the problem we're trying to solve before we talk about how we're going to solve it. You know, airlines came along and put a lot of science behind revenue management, but the business practice was not new, and the problem that they were trying to solve is not unique to the airline industry. So we're going to look at some low-tech examples of revenue management that have been around for a long time, and I hope you gain an appreciation for the fact that revenue management isn't really the name of a science or a computer system. It's a business practice that's used to maximize revenue under certain conditions. So let's start with a definition. So I'm going to give you a definition here. I'm going to say that revenue management is a business practice. Business practice, certainly we use a lot of science, but it's really just a way of managing your business to set prices when there is perishable inventory. And we're going to give an example of this right now. Perishable inventory. So the example I like to use for a business that has perishable inventory is a grocery store or a fruit vendor. So let's say we have let me choose a different color here. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit to give myself a little bit more room. Well, let me live. So we're going to use the example of a fruit vendor, and we're going to talk about how he uses revenue management to maximize the revenue he gets from his inventory of bananas. So he's got some bananas that he needs to sell. He knows that they have limited shelf life, and he needs to set his prices in a way that maximizes revenue for his inventory before it goes bad, before it spoils. So the first thing he has to do is figure out what price he's going to charge for his bananas. So he's going to set a price. Well, the way he's going to do that is he's got some historical data, right? He knows what the price of bananas was yesterday, the day before, and for a period of time in the past. So that's sort of his baseline. He could just set that same price today, and maybe he will. But depending on how much inventory he has, it will determine what price he can actually get. So he might actually want to raise his price today if he has limited inventory, or he may want to lower his price if he has excess inventory. So let me pause and write that down for you. So if he's got limited inventory, he may want to increase the price of bananas from the day before, and if he's got a lot of excess inventory, he may want to lower the price. And he wants to set a price that maximizes the revenue he can get from all his bananas before they spoil, because they're perishable. And let's say he's got one day before all his bananas spoil. So he's got to figure out a price that maximizes the revenue that he can get for his bananas before they spoil. So he needs to be careful that he doesn't set his price too high or too low and miss out on some revenue opportunity. So let's see what happens if he sets his price too high. So let's say he has limited inventory, he raises his price, but it turns out that there's not enough demand at that higher price. Well, in that case, he might have bananas left over at the end of the day that are going to spoil. Bananas left over. If he sets his price too low and there's more demand at that price level than he thought, then he may sell out too soon and miss an opportunity for selling the bananas at a higher price. Sell out too soon. So let me just scroll down here and give us some more room. So what he really needs to do is forecast demand at the different price levels. So let me write that down. So if he knew the demand at different price levels, he'd be able to choose the price that clears his inventory of bananas by the end of the day and maximizes his revenues. So let's put that here. So the way he's going to forecast demand is based on his knowledge of the market and his customers. So he's made price changes in the past. He has some idea of what happens to demand when he changes prices, and he's going to make his best guess of what the demand will be at different prices. Then he's going to choose his price based on his best guess that he thinks will maximize revenue. So these two things are what we mean when we talk about revenue management. And I think you can see why some science has developed to help with these two tasks. If this business had many different products over a longer time period and overlapping time periods, forecasting becomes complex. And then once the business has the forecast of demand at different price levels for a variety of products, then some optimization models are very useful in determining the set of prices to set to maximize revenue. So this problem of setting prices to maximize revenue before your inventory spoils exists in many different industries, whether it's something obvious like fruit going bad or a seat at a theater that can't be sold once the show is over, a parking space, a hotel room, advertising on a billboard, or of course airlines. So airlines, their inventory are the seats that it flies from point A to point B. That inventory is perishable in that it can't be sold once the flight departs. So the airline needs to determine what the demand at different prices will be, and then set those prices to maximize revenue on the seat inventory that it has before the flight takes off and those seats spoil. Airlines, of course, have a number of different destinations and flights and different time periods that people are purchasing tickets, so they use science and computers to help them forecast this demand and then set prices that maximize revenue. The fruit vendor doesn't need that level of sophistication, but he's applying the same business practices that the airlines use because he's got the same problem that he's trying to solve. So when you think of revenue management, keep in mind that there are different levels of sophistication needed to apply successful revenue management techniques. I've given you sort of two opposite ends of the spectrum with this fruit vendor and the airlines, but there are many businesses that fall somewhere in between. Now, we are going to spend a lot of time talking about this science that airlines use, but just remember that there is no one-size-fits-all solution in revenue management.